Chapter 4. Clerval occupied himself, so to speak, with the moral relations of things. The busy stage of life, the virtues of heroes, and the actions of men were his theme, and his hope and his dream were to become one among those whose names are recorded in story. Elizabeth didn't ask Henry about his secret in the morning, nor was his secret mentioned again until the 4th week of their self-imposed exile at the Villa Lavenza. The subject was surprisingly easy to avoid, for their days unfolded so harmoniously, conversation, walks, and books. She'd taken to sketching the landscape around the villa, which was more exquisite than any she'd ever seen. By the time she learned of Henry's secret, it was nearly November. By coincidence, this was also the morning that the first news arrived from Geneva since their departure. "The mail packet," Signora Julia announced at breakfast. Elizabeth sat across the table from Henry, still in her wrapper as she brushed William's hair, which was long as a cherub's. She'd soon have to trim his gold curls, a bittersweet consideration. He'd appear older without them. Signora Julia handed Henry one letter, Elizabeth two. Elizabeth set down the hairbrush. The first letter was from her uncle. "It pains me to admit my worst fears have come to pass, Elizabeth. We've had to summon troops to protect Geneva. Though the French promised to leave Geneva untouched, the view from my window reveals encampments across the lake. Invasion is but a matter of time. As for Ernest, I've rarely seen him in recent days. If I am to judge by the pamphlets in his possession, it seems inevitable that Geneva will bend to France in the new year." Elizabeth folded the letter away, trying her best to remain calm to avoid upsetting William. "Well," she said at last, "I believe we'll remain here through the winter." Henry looked up from his own letter. His mouth shifted as though to speak before Sophie interrupted. "What's the other letter, mademoiselle? Is it Victor?" "It's from Ernest." "Dear Elizabeth, I know this will upset you, but you should know the truth. I've begged my father to let me join the military, but he refuses. He still considers me an invalid, though the doctors say my lungs are all but healed. However, there's another reason for my need to leave home, which goes beyond anything I shall confide here." "He's involved with the revolution," Elizabeth fretted, "just as my uncle suspected." Sophie agreed. "I'm not surprised. I've heard gossip that he goes to coffee houses to play cards with soldiers." "I didn't know that." Elizabeth prayed he wasn't gambling. "I'll insist he remain at home. This is not the time to leave my uncle, not now." She determined to write Ernest as soon as she could, though there was something more bothering her. Victor, why was he still so silent? She'd hoped Alphonse's letter would contain news of him. At this thought, a prickle rose along her spine, a surge. She glanced up. Henry's gaze awaited hers. Henry, who knew Victor as well as she did. Better, even. His brow was crinkled. Something was troubling him, something he'd yet to admit, perhaps that secret he'd yet to confide. Then his brow smoothed, and he appeared as he ever was, calm, thoughtful. "Are you well?" he asked. "The letters are upsetting," was all she said. "I'll answer my uncle immediately." She tucked both letters away. William pulled at her hand, his grin revealing his milk teeth. "Garden, Lisbeth." Every morning they went for a constitutional, weather permitting. She excused herself, tightening her shawl over her wrapper. She'd dress upon her return. Anyway, there was no one to see her in her night clothes. No one who'd care. Outside in the garden, the weather was peculiar. Though the sun was a bright disk overhead, a bank of dark clouds rolled their way from across the lake. The air was also colder than expected. She needed more than a shawl. "A short walk," she told William. "I must answer your papa." As they strolled past the duck pond toward the orchard, the crisp air chafed her cheeks and stung her eyes. Just as William ran off to chase a duck, Henry appeared from beneath the apple trees. He offered his handkerchief. "You're weeping." "It's the cold air." She swiped at her eyes before handing his handkerchief back. Though those letters... To her embarrassment, she found herself sobbing in his arms. Victor, Ernest, the revolution in Geneva, they all seemed one, evidence of her uncertainty and vulnerability. Henry's coat smelled of coffee and his verdant green scent. She drew another breath to commit it to memory, as though this could banish sorrow. She imagined him lying in his bed an hour earlier, his light brown hair rumpled against his pillow, his hazel eyes opening lazily as he surfaced from his dreams, pupils constricting as they met the first light of day. She pulled away, heart thudding. "You're very patient with me. We should go inside. William?" Where had he gone? She could hear his squeal as he trampled leaves. "Come with me." The clouds were now overhead. How swiftly they moved.
"Look, Lisbeth."
William ran up, holding a rotting apple invaded by worms. Once she forced him to throw it away, she blew her nose and turned toward the house, wrapping her arms around her chest for warmth. She avoided Henry's gaze. She chattered as they walked, following William, who ran ahead. "It's chilly this morning, isn't it? You look cold, Henry. I should ask Signora Giulia to search the attic for warmer clothes. Do you think it's possible? I imagine they're moth-eaten." Henry blurted, "Beata, I'll be leaving tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow?" She halted to avoid tripping on a tree root. He nodded reluctantly, she thought. "I'll be travelling to Ingolstadt to visit Victor. It was planned all along." She gazed up at him, shocked by how upset she felt. "I don't understand." "I should have told you earlier, but I could never find the right moment. My father finally agreed to allow me a year of study. It was our bargain in exchange for my becoming his business partner. When he discovered I intended to escort you here, he assumed I wouldn't return to Geneva and made the offer. And then your uncle asked me to check on Victor, and it all seemed of a piece." An unconvincing smile. "I'll be studying languages in Ingolstadt for a year. Persian, Arabic, perhaps Sanskrit." This felt like a blow, one she hadn't anticipated, not after the arrival of those letters. How to respond? She lifted her chin, staring beyond the orchard toward the mountains. A crisp breeze, a flurry of starlings. "I do wish you'd told me," she answered in a careful tone. "I could have assured you it was unnecessary. You could have gone directly to Victor. Though I appreciate your protection." "I know. But I also knew accompanying you would bring your uncle peace of mind. Think of it as a consideration to him, if that makes my actions understandable. I meant to tell you about Ingolstadt sooner. I'd intended to leave once you were settled. Instead, I found myself wanting to remain here as long as I could, to help." Elizabeth met his eyes. "You did this for me?" He flushed. "Well, you and the Frankensteins. But I've delayed for too long." He held up the other letter that had arrived in the mail packet that morning. "Victor." "He wrote you, instead of me." "No, his landlady at the university. I'd sent a letter to let her know of my arrival, since Victor never answers. She writes he's scarcely left his rooms all summer. She thinks he may be ill." "So you're leaving me to rescue Victor, like you left your father to rescue me?" A nervous giggle. She'd yet to give up this habit from her childhood when uneasy. "So chivalrous. So good." Softly, "I don't feel very good right now." "Well, you should." She linked her arm with his in their old way. "I'll miss you, but you already know that. Forgive me for being so ungracious. I had no idea." "You could never be ungracious." He released her arm and backed away. "I leave in the morning. I know this is sudden. If I am to be honest, I find it painful to leave situations where I have found myself happy." A bow. "I should pack." It was only after Henry abandoned her in the garden that Elizabeth realized she hadn't expressed any concern over Victor and his potential illness. What is wrong with me? Henry didn't appear at lunch, nor was he present when Elizabeth came downstairs for dinner. In the meantime, she'd unearthed a cloak for him in the attic. She still couldn't believe she'd barely shown any emotion over the news from Victor's landlady. Victor can't be ill, she told herself again. He's too vigorous of constitution. It must be something else. But what? As Elizabeth mulled this over dinner, she stared at her raised hand, silhouetted by candlelight. The skin between her fingers appeared translucent, blurred, like she felt that night. Her courses had arrived for the first time in months. They were irregular from stress. To ease her cramps, she'd taken a tiny amount of laudanum, enough to dull discomfort, not enough to cause slumber, which emptied the vial. William, bored by the company of adults, had gone to bed early. Sophie had disappeared as well, no doubt eager for a night to herself. Alone. That's all I am. Elizabeth looked down at her plate. Risotto and grilled perch. It appeared unappealing, though Signora Giulia did what she could to please Elizabeth's palate. No matter. She stared up at the clock. 8:10. He's avoiding me because I'm a burden. 8:15. The double doors snapped open and Henry entered in a rush. Elizabeth craned her head over her shoulder, her heart rising in pitch. "Forgive me," Henry said, approaching the table. "I'm late. I lost track of time."
Not so late. I was just starting.
"Ah, I'm glad." Henry pulled out a chair, the one furthest from her, and opened the tureen nearest him before turning to the platter of fish. He filled his plate. "No Signora Giulia serving us tonight?" Elizabeth shrugged. She'd asked Signora Giulia to leave once she brought in the meal.
You're ready for the morning?
Henry nodded. "Martin will drive me to Leno, where there's a conveyance leaving for Milan at dawn." He drew a forkful of risotto into his mouth. Once he swallowed, he added, "I doubt I'll sleep much tonight. But I rarely do before travel. I've scant experience with it, to be honest."
You must write me news of Victor as soon as you arrive. I'm sure he's very busy. Or I should say, I hope he's very busy.
Another fork of food disappeared into Henry's mouth. "Let's trust that's all."
I'm most grateful. I shall miss your company.
I shall miss you too." A sip of wine. "I'm pleased to have been of service. I owe much to the Frankensteins. Your aunt especially."
I know.
Elizabeth felt oddly disappointed by his words. A cool draught rushed through the room, setting the fire to blazing. Elizabeth rose and banked it before returning to her seat.
What a night! On such a night, I swear I can sense my aunt's presence.
A giggle, but this one was forced.
I wonder what she'd make of Ernest and Victor.
I'm sure she'd soothe everyone. That was her way. Henry shifted to the chair next to hers. "You're still sad, aren't you?"
A little,
she admitted, no longer giggling.
I suppose it's Victor. You leaving, Ernest, my uncle, those letters today. I think there's something else going on with Ernest. Not gambling, not revolution.
What could it be? A woman?
I've no idea.
With the conversation on safer ground, Elizabeth didn't contain her words.
Ernest has been so volatile lately. He's not dissimilar to Victor.
Because he's passionate of nature? Elizabeth nodded, her appetite renewed. She took a taste of the risotto before replying.
I suppose.
She tapped the back of Henry's hand lightly after taking a sip of wine. The wine tasted full and sharp, like autumn itself.
In the past he's spoken of the Foreign Service. Now he wants to be a soldier. A revolutionary, really.
Another sip.
We should think of another vocation for him. Perhaps he should be a farmer. That's better than a soldier. He'd work the soil to nourish others. It would be good for his health.
A farmer? Henry laughed. No one can truly decide someone's future, though some try. Elizabeth raised a brow.
Such as your father?
Henry fumbled with his words. I hope that my year away at university will shift my father's opinion of what my future might be.
Ah. Then you didn't go into your bargain with him with an open heart?
I tried my best. He shook his head. Can you imagine me a merchant? I've no head for math or accounting.
No, but I can imagine you doing a fine job if you put your mind to it.
He let out a mock sigh. Now I understand how Ernest must feel about your opinions. You're not as soft as you appear. A log shifted in the fire, sending out sparks.
Very well, she said. Let us vow not to offer our opinions to Ernest. We shall allow him to find his path in the world, just as you wish to find yours.
A vow, he agreed. He dropped to his knees on the floor before her.
Henry, what are you doing? Get up.
If one is to vow, one must take it seriously. He gazed up at Elizabeth. She sensed yearning in his hazel eyes. Elizabeth Lavenza, I hereby vow not to interfere with your cousin's life. Will you do the same?
Get up, Henry. What if someone was to walk in on us?
Not until you vow too.
Very well.
Elizabeth dropped to her knees across from her friend, her palm raised to meet his.
I vow, she said. Now off the floor. It's cold there.
But he didn't move, nor did she. The moments stretched before them, long and elastic. Their fingertips brushed. Henry's lips parted. What would he say? Elizabeth wanted, no, needed, to know. The doors flew open. Donna Giulia. She cried,
Signorina Elizabeth, are you well? My cooking hasn't made you ill?
Henry stumbled to his feet. No, not at all. We were playing a game, one from our childhood. He offered Signora Giulia a bow. I depart in the morning. How grateful I am for your kindness.
Ah, you were bidding each other farewell. I apologize for the interruption. I'll return to clear the table.
Once Signora Giulia had bustled from the room, the clock chimed the hour. Both found their way back to their chairs. They snuck glances at each other beneath veiled eyes. By then the candles had burned to nubs, and the fire in the dining room smouldered into ash. She wondered whether Henry was courting someone in Geneva. If so, he never spoke of such.
I am a fool. We are no longer children as we once were.
Then she remembered.
I have a cloak for you, to keep you warm during your travels, she said. It's in the foyer.
I appreciate that.
Before you leave, I'll write a letter for you to give Victor.
I'll make certain he reads it, Henry promised, rising from his chair. His hands lingered on the wood top of the chair. Again she noticed his gnawed nails. I'll write when I arrive in Ingolstadt.
I'd like that. I'll give you Victor's letter in the morning.
I leave so early. I hate to disturb your rest. Is there some place you can set it for me?
I'll leave it on the dining table.
A wise plan.
Then this is farewell, Henry?
For now, Beata. She extended her hand. This time the moments didn't stretch before her, nor did their eyes or fingertips meet. Instead, Henry offered a quick bow before he fled. Chapter 5. Clerval continued talking for some time about our mutual friends and his own good fortune in being permitted to come to Ingolstadt. Upstairs in her room, Elizabeth was unable to sleep. The letter for Victor, she remembered. I'll write it. How could she have forgotten? She opened the drawer where she'd set her ink and quill. The drawer also held the sketch of the dark-haired demon she'd created the night of her arrival. She'd found the portrait too compelling to burn. She hid it in the bottom drawer and began to write. Her words wouldn't come, no matter how she tried. Dear Victor, dearest cousin, beloved friend. Ernest, she decided. I shall write of him, like Henry and I discussed. Vow or no, a farmer is a good idea, but she drew no satisfaction from the laying down of sentences as she once might have. All she recalled was Henry's promise to take the letter, that he'd be leaving in the morning. She made her words lighter than she felt. She made her words calmer than she felt. Once she blotted and sealed Victor's letter, she opened the door. And there Henry stood, dressed as she'd last seen him. "Still awake," she whispered. "I couldn't sleep. I tried my best. I thought to go downstairs. Get air." "I see. I meant to bring you... Victor..." Her words trailed off, for there she was, standing in the corridor clutching a letter. Nothing more need be said. "I didn't intend to startle you," Henry said. "I cannot abide the idea of leaving you here alone." "But I'm not alone. Not really." Yet how alone she felt. "I'm so selfish. Our Victor needs me, but all my thoughts are of you, Beata. You're safe. You're protected." "Selfish? You're the least selfish person I know." He took a step closer. He leaned over to finger the gold locket she always wore, the one bearing the small watercolor of Caroline. "I never noticed the portrait of your aunt before. It's so tiny. You painted this?" She nodded. "I should take it off. It's not meant to be slept in." "Then you haven't gone to bed yet? I didn't wake you?" "No." She held up the sealed letter. "Ah, give me it then." Don't leave, she thought, not yet. Somehow she took his hand and pulled him into her room. By then the last candle on her desk had guttered out. He didn't resist when she led him onto her bed beside her. They didn't touch save for their hips side by side. She closed the yellow bed curtains about them. "I know I'm being foolish," she said. "Sometimes at night you feel so alone," he finished, shifting on his side to meet her gaze in the dark. He reached beyond the curtains to set Victor's letter on the nightstand. "Victor and I, well, we used to sleep like this, as children. Well, we did even before he left for Ingolstadt. Not every night. Sometimes. It was a comfort." She felt vulnerable admitting as much. Someone of a less exalted mind would assume the worst. But Henry was pure of heart, fine of spirit, of another age, a kinder, more chivalrous age. "And you want to be comforted?" She nodded in the shadows. Comfort, that's what she wanted from Henry. Nothing more. "How strange to be here as mistress of this house. Sometimes I try to imagine my father as he might have been. The cloak I found for you," which was very thoughtful, "I doubt it's his. It's too new. Still, I like to imagine him wearing it, how he might have appeared in it." "What of your mother, Beata?" How warm Henry's voice was in the dark, soft, different from Victor's, which was lighter of pitch, yet sharper. "Was there anything more in the letter your aunt left you?" Elizabeth shook her head. "I know nothing except my mother died soon after my birth. I'd hoped Signora Giulia could tell me more. All she said was my mother was kind, quiet. I know my mother was German. I must look like her, for I have blonde hair. I assume she was also blonde, unless my father was too." Why was she speaking of her father and her mother while lying in bed beside Henry Clerval, Victor's dearest friend? Yet she couldn't bear to ask him to leave. "I should go," he said, as though reading her thoughts. "Let you sleep in peace." "No, I like you being here. Who knows when we'll next meet?" Her voice took on a distant tone. "I know it sounds peculiar, but it helps to know you've been here in my family home, that you know of my past." "I must admit I wondered about your childhood before the Frankensteins took you in. Your aunt never spoke of it." "I don't remember much from then." Somehow this subject made her more disquieted than speaking of her parents. It was difficult to conceive of her life before the Frankensteins. Sometimes in the apple orchard she recollected scraps of memories she'd tucked away like an out-of-fashion gown. The peasant woman who'd taken her in after the death of her parents. What was her name? Marina? Maria? She recalled other children. A man. If she tried hard, she could remember the sun streaming through green leaves spotted with red, the faint scent of rotting leaves, the melodic chatter of Italian. Elisabetta, they called her then. Beata. like Henry. Do you remember meeting your aunt and uncle for the first time?
Not really. But now that I know about my father, I've been trying to imagine what happened after his arrest. Him kissing me goodbye, believing he'd return soon.
She let out a long breath.
It's a more comforting story than my father abandoning me, aware he'd die in prison.
I'm sure your father would never abandon you on purpose. I can't imagine anyone abandoning you. Like Victor, an owl hooted outside from the garden.
She replied, I wish I had more memories from then. Something to hold on to.
I don't recall my mother either, Henry admitted. My father never recovered from the loss. She passed when I was 3. But it helps to remember what I can from his description. It's like bringing her to life, even if it's only for a moment. I close my eyes and list everything he's told me. The timbre of her voice, the shade of her hair, how much she loved us.
I should try the same, even if I'm imagining it.
She'd done this for Caroline after her death, as though she could bring her back to life. Her eyes stung. That journal, the guilt. She'd only pushed them away temporarily while at the villa. Henry must have sensed her thoughts, for he asked, What troubles you so, Beata? She couldn't answer him, not yet. In that moment she felt as though she was caught between past and future. In the past was all of her remorse and regret. In the future was her life with Victor, who would never learn that her actions led to the death of his beloved mother. But in the present, here she was with Henry. Compassionate Henry, kind Henry. Henry who was Victor's closest friend and as close to the Frankensteins as family. It's unfair to burden him with my guilt, she thought. And yet, before she could reconsider, she began.
There was a green Florentine paper journal I gave Victor. You probably recall my giving it to him during that last picnic in Plainpalais. I had the journal custom made for Victor because I wanted him to have something special from me to take with him. Because I wanted him to ask me to marry him before he left for Ingolstadt. I thought he'd be moved by my gift.
She felt Henry pull away in her bed. Did he propose then?
Not for several months, because I took ill that day. Scarlet fever, as you know.
A long moment of silence. Again, Elizabeth sensed the press of the future, the weight of the past.
But that's not all, Henry, she continued in a quiet, firm voice. It was because of that journal.
A deep breath.
My aunt died. My fault, if you will.
Beata, that's far-fetched. Many had scarlet fever that summer, not just you.
It's not. Listen.
It all spilled out. The story of the shopkeeper with the fever, how Elizabeth had ignored her warning, that Elizabeth felt unwell the morning of the picnic, but forced herself to go to woo Victor's favor. She didn't want him to leave for Ingolstadt without a promise of marriage. She felt too vulnerable despite Caroline's devotion and Alphonse's protection. After all, she was naught but a penniless orphan.
And so she died, and I can't seem to forgive myself, Henry. Oh, I've tried, how I've tried, but I can't.
It was fate, Henry said when she finally silenced. Elizabeth choked out, I don't believe that. But I do. I believe our lives are already marked before our birth. We've no choice but to abide and accept. The consolation of philosophy. It's helped me many a time with my own disappointments.
Such as your father and his business.
Along with other losses. A long pause. When Henry spoke again, his voice was ardent. Elizabeth Lavenza, you are the best woman I know. You're an angel. Elizabeth's cheeks felt wet.
I don't feel such.
You are. His hand lightly caressed her arm. I won't tell anyone what you told me, nor will I ever mention it to you. Try to forget. A soft kiss on her cheek. We should get some rest.
I'll try.
Elizabeth's fingers brushed the portrait of Caroline around her neck.
I should take it off.
But she couldn't bear to leave Henry's side. She settled for turning the portrait against her heart. She wiggled into his arms. Sleep, Beata. His voice was tender. "Sleep, Henry," she answered in turn. Instead of slumber, she found her head resting against his broad chest, his hand brushing her hair from her brow, his breath on her cheek as he shifted closer, toward her mouth. His lips were so soft against hers, barely touching, a press of warmth, of air. "I'm dreaming this, nothing more." Yet she didn't stop herself from reaching for him after he pulled away with a muffled apology. "No, it's fine," she whispered. And then her mouth slanted against his with a hunger she'd never felt before. He tasted of wine from dinner, warm, like the present rather than the past or future. "This isn't happening," she told herself. "As long as we don't speak, it's not real." Somehow she knew what to do in this ancient dance of men and women. She looped her arms about his neck to draw him closer, feeling no shame, no modesty. He lifted the hem of her nightgown, his palm warm against her bared knee. He let his hand rest there, as though asking permission. Whatever was going to happen between them felt a preordained force, a thread tying them as one, though she couldn't explain what created it. Was it yearning? Or a curiosity similar to the one that led her to sketch her body all those times? Whatever it was, this was a force beyond herself, a force she couldn't contain, though it didn't panic her, not yet. Instead, a peculiar serenity rose, one she'd never experienced, one she refused to quantify, not yet. "I love you," he whispered more softly than she imagined possible. "I always have." She felt a smile curl along her lips, a surge of joy, but she remained silent. As long as I don't answer him, I didn't hear this. But there were other ways she could respond, using hands and lips and limbs, though their caresses remained innocent. Suddenly her womb ached anew. Her courses! Somehow this broke that force connecting them. She pushed him away gently. "This didn't happen. A dream, nothing more." "Only a dream," he agreed, his voice breaking. He slid his hand from her thigh. "Good night, Beata." "Good night, Henry." They settled on their backs beside each other, their bodies rigid. Yet it felt too unnatural not to touch. Before she could think otherwise, they'd laced their hands across their stomachs. Like children, Elizabeth told herself. Nothing more. Chapter 6. The peasant woman, perceiving that my mother fixed eyes of wonder and admiration on this lovely girl, eagerly communicated her history. She was not her child, but the daughter of a Milanese nobleman. His property was confiscated. His child became an orphan and a beggar. When Elizabeth awoke in the morning, Henry was no longer next to her in bed. Though she knew she shouldn't have been surprised, she was. Some part of her had hoped he'd remain there, that they'd stay as they were, caught between past and future. Whatever had happened between them was a moment's desire for comfort. As for his confession of love, she'd imagined it, nothing more. Then she remembered. The journal. She'd told Henry. Did she feel lighter, less cursed? She wasn't sure. Not yet. She reached for Caroline's portrait locket to reassure herself the black silk ribbon hadn't broken while she slept. Still there. She sat up and opened her bed curtains. The letter to Victor was no longer on her nightstand. Henry had taken it. "He's gone. It's as well." "Monsieur Clerval has departed," she announced to everyone at breakfast. "He's travelling to Ingolstadt to visit my intended." For some reason, not naming Victor made her encounter with Henry feel less of a disloyalty. But what had she and Henry done? They'd held hands while asleep. As for that kiss, a dream, nothing more. She shivered, lightheaded. "Signorina, are you well?" Ella asked. "Is the room too cold? I can stoke the fire." "No, I'm well, thank you." Elizabeth glanced out the window.
It's windy today, isn't it?
Rain later, I'd say, Sophie said, who never missed anything. Elizabeth's cheeks flamed beneath her scrutiny. No matter. William approached and begged to run outside.
The apple orchard, he demanded. I want to play in the leaves, Lisbeth.
Later. I need to dress first.
It was too chilly to go out with only a wrapper, as she'd discovered yesterday.
No, now!
William raced from the dining room before any of them could stop him.
Come back, Elizabeth shouted, chasing the boy. You can't go alone.
She rushed into the foyer. No sign of him there, nor in the ballroom, though the doors to the garden were ajar. She rushed outside, clutching her wrapper, chest tight. An odd panic rose, the sense she was losing control of everyone and everything she cared about. First Victor, then Henry, Ernest, and now William. Even Justine with her mother, and Alphonse in Geneva because of the revolution. In the garden, she caught ear of William's bright laughter. She whirled, stomach cramping as she panted for breath. The apple orchard, the leaves, he'd gone there as threatened. His bright blonde head glinted between the trees.
William, come back, now!
Catch me, Lisbeth.
He trilled with laughter before he ran off, just as Martin the gardener appeared, clutching a basket of manure from the stench of it. This forced the boy to change course into Elizabeth's path, where she grabbed him. He squirmed against her chest like a puppy.
Let me go.
No, something could have happened. You can't run off alone.
I'm safe, Lisbeth.
But I can't take that for granted. I couldn't see you.
I'm fine, safe.
She set him down, held his shoulders at arm's length.
What a fright you gave me.
What a fright you gave me. The words echoed in Elizabeth's mind. Why? William whimpered.
Lisbeth, what's the matter?
I don't know,
she admitted, heart racing. What a fright you gave me. Where had she heard this before? Who'd said it? She set the boy down. She stared up at the rain clouds approaching, the apple trees. The wind rustled their gold-hued leaves, most of which had already fallen along the earth. Swallows and finches darted from branch to branch. She inhaled the scent of damp rising from the earth. And then Elizabeth returned to her past as though she'd stepped through an unlocked door. Maria, that had been her name, the peasant woman who'd sheltered Elizabeth after her father left. She'd seemed more careworn than anyone Elizabeth had known, face creased like an unmade bed, bones poking from all her corners. She had 4 other half-clad children pulling at her skirts. Elizabeth was around William's age. Younger, actually. Her memories tumbled. Maria throwing away Elizabeth's shoes, forcing her to walk barefoot in the ice. We'll gain more sympathy. Maria yanking her from a bank of flowers. What are you doing? You're supposed to be here, not there. Elizabeth's tiny hands splayed like starfish as she tried to clutch the colors of the twilight sky. That was the first day Maria hit Elizabeth, but not the last. Another memory beckoned, one where Elizabeth's dress was short, her bare feet caked in mud. An autumn day. There had been apples, but not from this orchard, another one nearby. They were all harvesting fruit for coin. She recalled flies buzzing beside their necks, the stench of horse dung. Maria scolded her for laziness. Elizabeth ran off, much as William had. "What a fright you gave me!" Maria cried, brushing dirt off Elizabeth's cheek. And then Maria slapped it. "Where did you go?"
"Nowhere,"
Elizabeth lied, for she'd chased a carriage approaching the road. A lady had emerged from it. A beautiful lady. And then Maria slapped her a second time. "Liar! Tell the truth!"
"I saw the Madonna,"
Elizabeth admitted after Maria pressed.
"She had long brown hair and a silk dress, a red ribbon on her bonnet."
Maria cocked her head. "The Virgin Mary came to you, and not even on a feast day. Where is she then? Did you ask her for a coin or two?"
"I forgot."
Elizabeth cringed. She had good reason, for Maria slapped her a third time. "What a liar! If only I'd let you starve."
Ow! I'm not lying. She's going to return tomorrow with her husband. She's going to take me with her to her palace where she lives with her son, who's near my age.
"I can hardly wait," Maria snapped. "In the meantime, stop lying."
I didn't make this up.
And Elizabeth hadn't. Caroline returned the next day, wearing her finest dress and with her hair dressed and powdered. Compared to Maria, she appeared an angel, with her panniers and powdered hair and gold necklaces and ribbons. She smelled of lilies. Beauty. "My name is Frankenstein. My husband is a syndic from Geneva. I am prepared to adopt your ward," Caroline announced when Maria brought her to their disconsolate cottage. "My husband and I can give Elizabeth every advantage. Most importantly, I already love her."
"I love her too, Signora,"
Maria simpered with fake sincerity. Elizabeth cringed anew.
"Though this child may not share my blood, I've acted as family to her. I've cared for her since she was a babe. She's a Lavenza, you know."
"A Lavenza?" Maria nodded.
"Noble blood. No doubt an heiress, though I haven't been able to find her family. But I will one day, and they will pay me for her care."
A hard smile.
"I can't let her go."
This was the first time Elizabeth had heard this. She didn't understand what it meant to be an heiress, but she did understand what it meant to have a family and what it meant to be paid for labor. Elizabeth wouldn't take the chance. She rushed to Caroline, threw her arms around her knees. She kissed her skirts, grabbed her hand. She'd never let her go. Elizabeth returned from her memory with a start. How long had passed? There she stood beneath the denuded apple trees, her villa behind her, a villa she would have never possessed if not for Caroline, who'd rescued her. Caroline who loved her like a mother. Caroline who was dead after nursing her so she would live. There was William beside her, clutching Elizabeth's hand. There were mountains, a lake, the apple orchard surrounding them. The sky darker than it had been. It would rain soon. William tugged at Elizabeth's wrist.
"I'm sorry, Lisbeth. Believe me?"
"I do believe you," Elizabeth replied, shivering.
"I was bad. What's the matter?"
"It's nothing, William. A sad memory." She squeezed his moist hand. It was fate. Wasn't that what Henry said? "Come, let's race to the door." And so they did, just as the wind picked up in earnest, though as Elizabeth ran, she felt chased by her past. Well, she'd outrace it along with William, though she'd let the boy win at the end. The wind blew her hair against her face, tugged the hem of her wrapper against her ankles. She laughed, "What a morning!" as she entered the villa with William, the hound loping by their side. At first, all seemed well. Inside the villa, Sophie offered Elizabeth a shawl to warm herself and yelled at the dog's muddy paws. Life appeared to return to its natural rhythm. But only for a moment. For while she and William raced toward the house, something else entered Elizabeth's mind, something she'd managed to ignore since she'd brought it into being on the night she arrived at the Villa Lavenza. The portrait, the one she tried to draw of Victor. It was up in her room, inside her desk. She needed to see it, now. She left the table and climbed the stairs toward her room.
"Lisbeth, come back!"
William's high-pitched voice trailed after her.
"Sophie has tea."
"I'll be a moment," she called back. "Save me some, please."
"It's my fault you're leaving. I ran away."
She couldn't answer him, wouldn't answer him. She didn't trust herself to speak without betraying her disturbance. Hands shaking, Elizabeth opened drawer after drawer, trying to recall where she'd set the sketch of Victor. She found it inside the bottom drawer where she'd moved it. There it was, that face she'd drawn in ink. It appeared as she remembered, sinister and carnal, the hair dark and luxuriant, the lips thin and black and cruel, the eyes watery and light.
Nothing like Victor. Yet it was, wasn't it? Suddenly she realized. She'd drawn Victor in this manner because she no longer wanted to marry him. And it wasn't only this. There was more. And at last she had no choice but to acknowledge the truth she'd resisted until it festered like a blister. God help me, I love Henry. And he loves me too. Sketch in hand, Elizabeth sank onto the bed, sobbing until she gasped for air. She pressed her nose against her pillow, yearning for Henry's scent, that subtle tang of verbena and sun. She recalled Henry beside her in her bed. Henry lifting the hem of her nightgown, caressing her knee. The warmth of his breath against her flesh, his lips as they'd kissed. She'd felt no modesty, only desire. I love you. I always have. She would have made love with him, given herself to him. She would have betrayed Victor, betrayed her vow to Caroline on her deathbed, betrayed her promise to the Frankensteins, who'd saved her from a life of abuse and poverty. Disloyalty and opportunity, that's what I'm made of. Ella pulled the curtains from her bed.
Tea's ready. Signorina, why are you crying?
Sophie joined Ella. Their startled faces hung over Elizabeth like apples from a tree. What's wrong? Ella flailed her arms.
I don't know, Sophie. I didn't do anything to her.
Sophie said in her most soothing voice,
Tea will calm you, mademoiselle. You're upsetting William. Come, take my hand. Now.
As Elizabeth stared at Sophie's outstretched hand, she recalled Henry's with his bitten nails, the way he ran his finger around the rim of that wine glass that first night, his palm on her knee, that kiss. He's gone. And then somehow Elizabeth did take Sophie's hand, for Elizabeth had no desire to upset William, or anyone else for that matter. Sophie's words had somehow returned decorum to her. I'm sorry, Elizabeth muttered as Sophie and Ella led her downstairs to the kitchen. I don't know what upset me. But she did know. She glanced out the windows toward the mountains, the lake, the gardens, the villa roofs with its perfectly symmetrical chimneys and windows, the autumnal landscape with the rapidly moving clouds. Mine. All because of Caroline.
It's the isolation here,
Ella said with a shrug.
And now Monsieur Clerval is gone.
Elizabeth bit back a sob. Yes, Monsieur Clerval is gone. And we must never be. If I'm to love him, it must be as a friend. Where was Henry now? She tried to imagine him in the carriage to Ingolstadt. What would he find when he arrived there? Would Victor sense their intimacies? What if Victor really was unwell? And then she knew. She had to go to Ingolstadt.